Good evening, class. Good evening, professor, and whoever is my peer review student. My name is Amanda, and it is just about the end of the semester, so thank you guys once again for tuning in to one of our last assignments, which is to create a speaking activity. Now, my activity would be called Breaking the Ice. And this activity is going to be involving both the professor and all of the students. What I would like the students to learn from this assignment would be to learn how to talk about touchy subjects in a fun way, and one that's ice-breaking, where you get to know the other students in the class as well as get to know your professor. So first I wanted to talk about a little bit about how this activity would work in a classroom setting. The teacher would first hand out a list of commonly asked questions or questions that are suitable to ask another student or the professor themselves, and also questions that are off limits and are deemed a little bit too uncomfortable for some students to answer. Now, the students and the professor can go off of the list and come up with their own question. That is always okay, but it's just like a little guide as to what your question should look like. Now, the professor would be giving his or her speech the first day of class and would be answering 5 questions either off of the paper or that he or she chose for themselves to answer. Next, he would choose a student. The professor would choose a student that they wanted, and then the student would write down the questions, and then the first speech for the next class that they would deliver would be answering those questions. And then the first speech that student did would be answering those questions. And so the student would then go up to the podium or wherever the professor had for them to speak, in front of the classroom, or even, since it would be the first day, standing up in their chair. And he or she, being the student, would answer the questions, and then he or she would choose the next student to ask 5 more questions to. And that would go on until everybody in the class had answered all of the questions. This can work the same way in online format, except it will be in video version, sort of like this video. And the professor would actually, for the online, assign students, and then that way the students can just private message each other. That way everybody knows who their partner is right away. They're not scrambling to make schedules line up and everything like that. They don't actually have to meet up or anything. They can just email them or private message them on Canvas the questions, and then the students will answer in a video. For example, one student may ask another student, "How many pets do you have at home?" And the student can answer. I'll use my answer and say 5. And then the first student can always say, "Please explain." And then the other student would answer, "I have 2 dogs, 2 cats, a crested gecko," and so on and so forth. And the list would continue on from there. And the follow-up question would not, or the asking for the explanation would not be considered the second question. It would just be considered a continuation of the first question. Although if there are follow-ups, such as if the information is not given, like what breed of dog is it, and the next question is what breed of dog is your dog, then that would be considered a second question. But to explain and answer a little bit more thoroughly would not be considered an a second question. It would just be considered a continuation. So overall, I think this icebreaker activity is really important. Not only is it a lot of fun, I think for most students to get to know each other. I personally really love getting to know about other students, as well as I'm a big sharer, so I share a lot about myself. And I think that it would really help them to break the ice, hence the name Icebreaker, as they meet their new classmates and join this new class, and even having the professor answer questions about him or herself will really help them to feel more at ease and more comfortable and personable with the professor as well, which would make the class a lot easier to speak in front of.